Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Z-Huts, how to build Android apps using MIT App Inventor 2. Now in our last video, we took a look at how to use buttons to play sounds. Now we just had them all lined up going down the screen. In this tutorial, we are going to take a look at how to use arrangements. So we can get buttons put right next to each other, or we could have like a text box, then a slider, and then a checkbox, and have them all right next to each other across the screen instead of one above the other. All right, well, let's just get right into it. So first, of course, we got to get MIT App Inventor opened up. Then we're going to go to projects, and we're going to start a new project. I'm just going to name this Z-Hut, because this is not anything I'm going to be distributing, so we just got to give it a name. All right, so we got the designer opened up. So like I said last time, we had the buttons, and we had like one button here, one button here, and then if you wanted more, you just keep running them. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go down and click on layout, and we're going to take a look at using arrangements. So first of all, we're going to check out the horizontal arrangement. This is actually the one that I use the most when I'm making apps. Table arrangements, I don't run into that very often, but for like the last tutorial we did here, episode 2, for the sound effects app, the table arrangement would work good in that. We will get to the table arrangement in a moment, but I'm going to show you the horizontal arrangement first. So let's just left click on it and drag one in. The height, we can probably just leave that automatic for the tutorial. That's up to you. You probably, when you're building your app, are going to want to figure out a height for it. The width, I'm going to just set that to fill the parent, which means it covers the screen side to side. The alignment, I'm going to actually do both the vertical and the horizontal to center. Fill parent, we want it visible, and we don't want any image. And we don't want a background color. Now, I'm not putting a background image on this. In the last video, we did put a texture image in the background. But for this tutorial, we're not going to need it. We're not actually building an app in this tutorial. We're just showing you how to use the arrangements. And then you can take that knowledge along with the knowledge from the previous video on the buttons and the sound, combine the two, and make a real awesome sound effects app. So, all right, I have the horizontal arrangement dragged in and put in place. We got everything set, so let's go ahead and go back to the user interface. Now, we want to have these buttons spaced out. So we're going to drag in a button. Then we're going to drag in a label, and if you remember right, in the last video I used a label as a spacer, and you're going to find you're going to use the label as a spacer more often than as an actual label. Now actually in the next video I'm going to be doing, we're going to get into labels a little more and how to use them and change what they say. Because you got text boxes, but that's where you type in information. The label is going to be where you display information. But you can also use it as spacers. And I use tons of them doing this. So, all right, well, we got off track there for a moment. Let's grab another button, bring that in and drag it in on the other side. Now, you see we have a spacer in here, but we don't want that much space between them. So I'm going to left click back on it. First, I'm going to delete the text for the label. And then the height don't matter, it's the width. Let's try 15 pixels. How's that? Yeah, that's pretty good space. Maybe a little more. Have it a little. That's almost perfectly spaced. That's almost perfectly spaced. And you see how easy that is. And then, of course, probably so you remember what it is rename it. And SP for spacer, and then number 1. The next label would be number 2 as a spacer. That's how I prefer to do it, and it works good. And it, you know, it lets me know what that label is being used for. So there we go. We just set up a label. Excuse me, we just set up an arrangement. We got 2 buttons next to each other. Now, we're going to get into the table arrangement in a moment, but in a lot of cases, you might not need to do that. What you could do is take and drag in another label, use that as a spacer, set your height, let's say, we'll just randomly pick 25. Then go back down to layout, drag in another horizontal arrangement. Then set the width, fill parent. Okay. The height, we'll leave that automatic. We'll set that center and center for vertical and horizontal. Oh, and before I forget, go back here. First, let's rename this SP2 because that's spacer 2. And then let's get rid of the text from that so it's not showing up. Delete. There we go. Now we've got a space between the 2. Now let's drag in another button. Another label we're going to use as a spacer. And drag in another button. Now we'll go and get rid of the text for that. Delete. The width, what did I, if I remember right, I had that at 25. Yep. I had that at 25. Let's see. Oh, the label. Rename it. This will be SP3, spacer 3. There you go. Now that's how you do custom heights between, if you've got these buttons, that arrangement of buttons, this arrangement of buttons. This allows you to put the space between them, and you don't have to use the table arrangement. And the table arrangement can get a little confusing, and I do admit, normally I'll usually do it this way instead of using the table arrangement. But I'm going to go ahead and show you. I do understand how it works, but it does get a little more complicated than just doing it this way. So we've got this done. Now normally then you go, if you were combining this with the sound effects, is you'd drag in your sounds, you drag in 4 sounds, and then set your buttons, the images or the colors, however you want, and then go into the blocks editor and assign each button when it's clicked to play which particular sound effect you want. And that's just carrying on from the previous video. So you could combine the 2 of these, have some more fun with it. But let's move on and just delete the 2 of these. And we're going to go over to the tables. Oops. Delete. All right. Oh, we don't need that spacer either, so we can get rid of that. All right, let's go back down to the layout. Now there is the vertical arrangement. I just showed you the horizontal arrangement. The vertical arrangement works the same way, except it's vertical. I don't think I need to go into it. If you understood how I did the horizontal, the vertical should make sense to you. The horizontal is what you are going to use most of the time, I'm guessing. Vertical arrangement, I don't think I've played with it, but I've never actually used it in constructing any of my apps. So I'm just going to leave it at that. It's the same thing as the horizontal, it's just vertical. So play with it. If you want to use vertical, just play with it. And if you understand how I did the horizontal, you'll figure it out. But let's go to the table arrangements. Drag that in. Now we have to set how many columns, how many rows. All right, well, I'm going to do 3 rows because we're going to do the same thing as we did before. We want 4 buttons and we want them in 2 rows. Now, yes, I put 3 in. because we want a space between them. If we didn't have that extra row, they'd all be clumped up next to each other. And you'll see here in a moment, as I start dragging the components in, you'll see how that works. Now, we're using 2 buttons, but we also need to have 3 spacers in there. So we need to set that to 5. Because what we're going to have is a spacer, the button, spacer, button, spacer. Now you could probably get away with 4. I've tried it, but I like just running the 5. It gives me a little more control on how to get everything lined up perfectly. You could try it with the 4, but trust me, the 5 works really good for the columns if you're doing 2 buttons. And if you're running more buttons, just make sure you take an account for the spacers between each button and then set that as your columns. All right, we got that set. The height, I'm just going to make it 300. We don't need to fill the whole screen. And the width, we are going to fill the parent. There we go. Now we go back to the user interface. Drag in our label, and that's our spacer. So what we'll do is we're going to set that right off the bat. We're just going to put that at 20. And we'll see. We might need to change that here in a moment. The text, we're going to just delete that. We don't need the text because that's our spacer. And we're just going to rename that SP1 spacer number 1. Next, we'll drag in a button. Put that in the next block. Then we're going to drag in another label. And we're going to set the width of that one. Let's do like 25 on that. And then, of course, get rid of the text. And then rename that spacer 2. Then drag in another button. There we go. Oh, I got that in the wrong spot. There we go. Now, as you can see, we got to change a few things. There is a bigger gap over here than over here. Unfortunately, with the table arrangements, it does not automatically center everything. And that's one of the reasons I just stay away from it and just use the normal arrangements. I have better luck with it. I guess it's up to personal preferences, but this is how we fix it. We're going to go back over here to our spacer 1. We have that at 20. I think if we bump that to 30, it's going to be about evenly spaced. Well, that's pretty close. We might want to go like 32. Let's try that. Now that's pretty close to centered. That's pretty close. Probably not going to get 100%, but that's close enough that you're not going to be able to really tell unless you're putting a tape measure on your screen and measuring it. So let's move on. Now you can put another spacer over here. I leave that extra column just in case I do need to put one in, and I've only had run across that circumstance a couple times, but I always put it in there just so I have that option if I need it. Like I said, you could have probably done 4 columns and it'd work out, but I put the 5 just in case. And when you start playing with App Inventor more, you're going to run into circumstances where you'll understand why I said that. So I'm just going to leave it there for now, and we're going to move on. We're going to bring in another label, and we got that down here. Now that, we got to double check. What was spacer 2? Was 25. So spacer 3, we want that to be the same. Otherwise, it does affect the ones above it as well, which this is another reason why I usually don't use the table arrangements. I think by now you're understanding I try to stay away from them, but I'm going to still show you how to use it in case you want to. Now we're going to delete the text for that. Now we do need to put a height. Let's try 25. Yeah, that should be enough space. Then we can drag in, and down below here we got our third row. Oh, she's not letting us, or did I accidentally? Oh, let me check. Did I mess up here? Table arrangement. We got 3 rows. All right. Then I should be able to drag in another label. And what the? Yeah, this is another reason I stay away from these. I have 3 rows, and it's only letting me use 2. I have actually run into this problem before, and I honestly don't know why it does this. We can throw in some more junk and see if it lets us carry over. And no, it don't. Here's another example of why I stay away from this. And I'm going to go back right here, table arrangement. We have 3 rows. We're only using 2. That's the first row. This is the second row. Now, all of a sudden, the third row ain't here. And if you put it under there, it's going out of the table arrangement. Right there is the biggest reason why I don't like using table arrangements. It just does goofy things like this for no reason. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm not going to go into it any further, but this, stay away from the table arrangements. Just use the vertical and horizontal. You're going to have better luck. And you just seen, I mean, I'm showing you right now, I have 3 rows, but it's not letting me put the third in. And I've run into this before. I've had it set at like 5 rows. And it'll let me put 2 or 3 in, and then the other 2, I don't know why. It might be just a glitch, or it might be, I just don't use the table arrangement ever. Basically, I played with it. I know kind of how it works. And I always had these problems. That's why I stay with it. So my suggestion, just go, whoops, don't want me to lay out. Just go with the horizontal arrangement. Drop that in, set your stuff up, bam. Piece of cake, no problems. All right, I'll quickly cover, there are 2 more. There's a scroll arrangement horizontal and a scroll arrangement vertical. I've actually never used this, but from what I understand how it works is it sets up an arrangement that is scrollable. You've seen how the others work, and that's what you're most likely going to be using. If you want to check these out, what I would do is click on the more information and play with them. This is something more advanced, and these are beginners tutorials that I'm doing right now. So I'm not going to go into these. They're there. Check them out, play with them. And like I said, the table arrangement, if it was possible, I'd delete it off the screen. It wouldn't even be there. And the vertical arrangement, like I said, it works like the horizontal. It's just vertical instead of horizontal. So with that, this video's got to be getting up there in time, so I think we'll wrap it up. The next video coming up, I think I'm going to do sliders and then also use labels. And instead of using labels as spacers, we're going to show you how to use a slider and then display the value of the slider in a label. So make sure you subscribe, because that video will be the next one coming up. That will be episode number 4, if I'm not mistaken. So I would like to thank you for joining us here today at the Z Hut. I hope you have a great day, and remember, have fun building your apps.